Who are the Taliban and what is happening in Afghanistan? As the Taliban continue to seize one regional capital after another, gaining control over Afghanistan territory, the international community is alarmed by the fate of the country and its global implications. The United Nations in July this year warned that around 270,000 people had been forced to escape once the US troops withdrew, a number that has further multiplied by now. The Taliban is an Islamic fundamentalist group that aims to make Afghanistan into an Islamic state. The Taliban, which means students in the Pashto language, emerged in the year 1994 around the southern Afghan city of Kandahar. It was one of the factions fighting a civil war for control of the country following the withdrawal of the Soviet Union and the subsequent collapse of the government. It originally drew members from the so-called Mujahideen fighters who, with the support from the United States, repelled Soviet forces in the 1980s. Within the space of 2 years, the Taliban had gained sole control over most of the country, proclaiming an Islamic emirate in the year 1996 with a harsh interpretation of Islamic law. The years of 1996 up till 2001 saw a northern alliance resisting the Taliban. The killing of the leader of the alliance and the 9 September 2001 attack at the World Trade Center by Al-Qaeda led the NATO troops to declare war on Taliban, and US-backed forces swept into Kabul. The Taliban melted away into remote areas where it began a 20-year-long insurgency against the Afghan government and its Western allies. So how much money has been spent? The vast majority of funding on NATO's forces in the war against the Taliban has come from the US. Between the years 2010 to 2012, when the US for a time had more than 1 lakh soldiers in the country, the cost of the war grew to almost $100 billion a year according to US government figures. As the US military shifted its focus away from offensive operations and concentrated more on training up Afghan forces, costs fell sharply. By the year 2018, annual expenditure was around $45 billion, a senior Pentagon official told the US Congress that year. According to the US Department of Defense, the total military expenditure in Afghanistan from the year 2001 until the year 2019 had reached $778 billion. So what is happening in Afghanistan now? The clashes between the Taliban, supposedly backed by neighboring Islamic states, and the government of Afghanistan, backed by the NATO forces, continued till early this year when the US decided to step back after a deal with the Taliban leaders and suggested that the Taliban and the government indulge in peace talks. The US and its allies had invaded Afghanistan after the 11 September attacks. They claimed that their interference in the Afghan civil war was to dismantle Al-Qaeda, which was responsible for the attack on the World Trade Center and had a strong base in Afghanistan. This was to be done by removing the Taliban from power. In April 2021, President Biden said that they had achieved their mission long ago and announced their pullout from Afghanistan.
I'm now the 4th American president to preside over war in Afghanistan. 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I will not pass this responsibility on to a 5th president. I will not mislead the American people by claiming that just a little more time in Afghanistan will make all the difference. Nor will I shrink from my share of responsibility for where we are today and how we must move forward from here. I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me. I'm deeply saddened by the facts we now face. But I do not regret my decision to end America's warfighting in Afghanistan and maintain a laser focus on our counterterrorism mission there and other parts of the world.
He said, "It's time to end America's longest war," he said in a speech at the White House. At the time of his announcement, there were some 2,500 US troops in Afghanistan. The stepping back of US troops ended up triggering widespread bombings and killings. According to a BBC report, by early August, Taliban was in control of half of the country. By Saturday, it captured a large, heavily defended city in northern Afghanistan in a major setback for the government. On August 15, Taliban forces entered Kabul and President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, signaling the collapse of the government. 9 days after seizing its first provincial capital, the group appeared to have taken control of virtually the entire nation. As countries scrambled to evacuate people from the Kabul airport, President Joe Biden expressed no second thoughts about his decision to stick by the US commitment formulated during the Trump administration. "I stand squarely behind my decision to finally withdraw US combat forces," Biden said, while acknowledging the Afghan collapse played out far more quickly than the most pessimistic public forecasts of his administration. "This did unfold more quickly than we anticipated," he said.